Hey guys, welcome to this episode of the TWNY podcast. Just a quick reminder that we are not professional medical personnel and TWNY is not a replacement for medical treatment. And as always, if you would like to be a guest on the podcast, head on over to our website at www.twny.life and reach out. I hope you enjoy the podcast, and remember, it's okay to not be okay.
Well, I've seen the devil's shadow underneath the moon. Keep that fire going, the sun is coming soon.
There we go. Now we're recording. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, a little bit of hiccup on time there, but as far as like when we were gonna do this, but you had some baseball stuff going on, right?
Yeah, actually my youngest, he's playing baseball, so kind of got roped into being an assistant coach for him.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to come by.
You know, I know a lot of
Fun
dads.
here.
I know a lot of dads who get roped into being coaches
Yeah,
for baseball.
yeah. They're like, "You want to do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "All right, I got to remember, like, I need to dedicate attention to,
Mm-hmm.
every kid is equal." So yeah, pretty exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're starting next week for certain. We had a meeting the other night. So yeah, and then he had tryouts before. So
So is this like what is this? Is this like little league, like
yeah, it's
coach's pitch, or what is that?
So he tried out. So he's 7. He's my oldest, Troy.
Mhm.
And he tried out for the AAA.
Okay.
So it's like they call it majors, so just like Major League Ball, right? So you have the MLB, you got AAA, AA, single A, and they got like a prospect, which is T-ball, I think.
Okay.
So AAA was 8, I think 10 and under, like 8 to 10 or whatever it is. And so yeah, we tried out, and I guess this year was like a record year for them. So they're like, "Hey, we
Really?
had way too many 8-year-olds try out this year who are actually 8." He's like, "So I'm gonna have to put them down to double A." And I was like, "Oh, that's fine, whatever." But a bunch of his friends were playing, and another one of his friends got moved because of his age, and yeah, he was a little bummed, but
Mhm.
it's what it is. And he's going to school. He goes to school with one of the kids on his team, which his parents are actually coaching as well. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Pretty excited for it. He had a ball last year. So
That's cool. Yeah, I never really got into baseball when I was a kid, and I like baseball. I hope that when I have kids, I hope they're interested in that because I think that'd be cool to get involved with that.
yeah, I was I don't really have a baseball background either. I mean, I played a little bit in middle school,
Mhm.
played freshman year of high school, and I went to a big school anyways. So if you weren't, you know, potential of playing at college, you weren't going to play. And
Yeah.
I was big into wrestling, so that consumed my whole life. Was
Oh man, we could talk for
Mhm.
hours. That's what I did.
Yeah,
I was a wrestler.
yeah, and so I'm kind of glad that he's really not interested in that.
Mhm.
I enjoyed it, but I definitely know kind of he wouldn't. uh,
Yeah.
just the kind of the grind that it is, and
It absolutely is.
he's a huge into hockey too. So
Mhm.
which I am too. I'm a huge. That's the
That's
only
cool.
professional sport that I watch.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you said, "Hey, let's today works better," because we went down and watched the New Jersey Devils and Rangers play in Newark last night. So
Oh, sweet.
yeah, it was pretty sweet. It was pretty rowdy. Had a great
Yeah.
time. Ended up getting back this morning. So yeah, it was a good
Yeah.
time.
My dad always tells a story that well, my dad doesn't tell the story, my stepmom does, but so he's not very much a people person, right? He's a rancher. He likes to just do his own thing.
Yeah.
He's not big into crowds, right? So she took him to a hockey game for like an anniversary gift, I believe it was, type deal. And it was absolutely miserable for him. I mean, he enjoyed the game and everything like that, but the rowdiness and just everybody around just being insane.
How loud? Yeah, just
yeah,
the noise.
was,
He's like, man, I want to go
he's
home.
like, man, I just want to go home.
So yeah,
Oh.
he's busy into hockey as well, which is awesome. I mean, I enjoy watching him play hockey. I'm like, I will push you every inch of the way,
Yeah, absolutely.
Continue
Feed
to pursue that.
feed that wolf for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool that you wrestled. So my little brother, he just started wrestling again. He was kind of, because there's always a competition between wrestling and basketball, especially in high school, right? So it's like, what are you going to join? And for the longest time, we thought he was going to do basketball because he just really wasn't having it with wrestling. And this year, he just came out of nowhere, and he's my little brother, right? So he's looking to like be significantly better than I ever was, which is kind of like, I'm happy. I'm really happy for him, and I'm happy for that. But at the same time, I'm like, dang, wish I could go back and like redo it.
Yeah, the competitive side. It's
Exactly.
I think that's what every wrestler has anyways, is
Mm-hmm.
the willingness to be better than the next on an individual level. And I think you're definitely harder on yourself throughout the entire process. So yeah, man, it's fun. I loved it. It was a love-hate relationship, because they do the hydration test.
Mm-hmm.
This was my senior year, and they were like, you need to be our 145 this year, because the year prior, same thing, I failed the hydration test twice, and they were like, all right, like you got to stop, because third
Mm-hmm.
time you're not going to wrestle. And I'm like, so yeah, I had to wrestle 152 that year. And then senior year, so they do the hydration test and they do your body fat. I weighed in at, I think, like 146.3, and they're like, you don't have enough body fat, and
Yeah.
they're like, you're 152, and I'm like, that's a pound, like.
Yep.
And
Yeah, that
like,
was the
no,
worst.
yeah, so
Oh yeah, the stuff I would do to lose weight, man. So this super funny story, real quick. I know this isn't a wrestling podcast by any means, but so I had to lose weight. I had to lose like I came in the morning. We would like show up at the wrestling room before we would go to our match. We'd show up there, and if any of us had to lose weight or were teetering on the edge, we waited in the morning. And I don't know what happened. It couldn't have been the burger I ate the night before, but I was 4 pounds over what I was supposed to be. And so what we do is we just get as many coats on as we can. We get in the excursion. We were a small team. Blast the heaters, and you spit in a bottle all the way.
yeah, oh yeah.
And so I'm sitting here spitting in this bottle. It's icy because we're in Colorado, right? So we're trying to get to Denver, and icy roads, and just the driver was amazing, coach was amazing. It's just the situation couldn't have helped it, and we ended up going off the road and rolled the excursion.
Holy
Right?
cow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rolled it right down a cliff. And once we finally we land upright, which is good, but I don't know if it was just like kind of startled by the whole situation, but the windows were shattered, but I lost my bottle. So I just started spitting out the window as we were just sitting there.
Never mind the accident.
We never actually made it to Denver, but we ended up, obviously going back because it was kind of a big deal. But I was still trying to lose weight the whole time. So, man, super glad to have you on, for real. It kind of a milestone for the podcast, because you are the first listener. Like, most of the guests that I've had on, I've known or in some way knew prior. So you're the first person who listened to the podcast and then asked to be on, which is what I want people to do. I want people to come on and tell their story from any background, from anyone. And so super excited to have that for the first time.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, man. I just, figured if it can help somebody go through and come out better and stronger, you might as well share your story and try to help as many along the way as possible.
That's what we're trying to do, man. That really is. And so just for a little background about you, man, go ahead and just, former military, but get into it a little bit. What's going on with Corbin?
So yeah, like you said, you touched on it a little bit. Former military. I was at 3rd Ranger Battalion, spent my entire military career there, which was cut shorter than I wanted it to be. But yeah, it was great. 6 deployments, supporting all types of missions. It was great. I mean, it was tip of the spear, was a building block for what I wanted to do next. And that was to go to a special missions unit at Bragg and try to take the long walk and just continue to try to better myself. And was fortunate enough in 2017 to be attached to a certain group, and we're fighting the Islamic State. And I guess and back up a little bit, I was a mortar, so it's kind of the joke, it's the redheaded stepchild of Ranger Battalion,
For people that don't understand, if you could explain a little bit what mortars are, if for listeners who might not know what that is.
Yeah, so mortars are a indirect fire system, mobile unit. It's like a light artillery, I guess, so to speak. Really no similarities, but that would be the closest thing to put it as.
Yeah.
So there's 3 different weapon systems. There's a 60 millimeter 81 and a 120, and vary in size and weight. And as a mortar, you would get the short end of the stick every time, because it was a underutilized asset, because working in a special operations community, I mean, you have endless, assets,
Endless resources.
Yeah, who are supporting the mission, and you're just kind of sitting on the back burner because what you have to do to use them as far as deconflicting airspace, whatnot. So yeah, we really didn't have any type of, we kind of lost our relevance there for a little bit, which didn't hurt us in Afghanistan or whatnot, because we'd still run with line units and still hit compounds and do stuff like that, be on BPs. But yeah, I mean, in order to use them, it just took a lot, and by that time they would just rather use something else that's there. And I don't necessarily blame them, because it was awesome. But yeah, kind of 2017 really just paved the way, and I guess secured us work again, if that's how you want to put it. Fighting against the Islamic State. It was kind of, do what you got to do to take over the city of Raqqa and, push them back. So, man, we were shooting the big gun, the 120 millimeter every day. And there were days where we're shooting 200 rounds a day easily.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was it was a small element. There was only, me and another guy running the system, because we're the only ones who knew how to use it, and we're subject matter experts on it. They're just kind of like, hey, we have you here to do this, like, do your job, and basically we'll leave you alone and we'll love you. And it's kind of went in there, I guess, a little undermanned or understaffed. I don't know. I think it may have been an ego thing too, but yeah, we were just getting after it day in and day out. And I ended up feeling like super weird, run down, and just chronic headaches, short-term memory issues, like stuff like that. And kind of led into the injury. There's more stuff that happened on that rotation that probably contributed to it. like other munitions and just stuff like that.
To add some context though, like for anyone listening, I encourage you to look up slow-mo videos of 120 millimeter mortars actually going off, the concussion, and how close the operators are near those mortars when it's going off the tubes. It, I think, will add a lot of context to when you say you were firing off 200 a day, you know.
Yeah, man, that was a high end. I would say average was, roughly 100.
Even still
Uh,
though, that
yeah,
concussion is no joke.
it was intense. I mean, we were breaking equipment left and right, like sights and stuff that you use to lay the gun in and aim. They were just snapping. The gears in them were snapping. Bipods were
Oh
snapping.
yeah.
The breech caps were just coming loose.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, let's just keep going, like we got a
Mhm.
mission, like let's keep pushing. Like I'm here, I'm intact, I at least thought I was. I had all my extremities. So I was like, hey,
Yeah.
let's keep going, And yeah, it was wild. So towards the end, I was like, man, I like feel weird. Like my
Mhm.
ability to make a sound split-second decision really became compromised. Like I see the threat, I analyze the threat, I eliminate the threat. It was, I see something, it looks like a threat, react, type of
Mhm.
situation like that. And I was like, man, like something's not right. So I ended up going, uh, came back, finished out that rotation, came back, went to neurology, and I was like, hey, like something's not right. Um, well, let me back. I got referred by a medic because you got to go through your proper little channels, and they
Mhm.
got to put in a referral to see a specialist. And he's like, yeah, man, something's not right. So I'm going to refer you out. So I did. And the guy went in there to have a very brief discussion with him, some civilian doctor. He was a neurologist. Yeah, he asked me a couple questions and then he was like, yeah, I don't think that you have a TBI, which is traumatic brain injury. So I was like, cool. Like, I don't want to
Yep.
be here anyways. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Like
I'm
you
here
know
to
what you're
kind of
talking
like check
about,
the
so.
box. I feel something's wrong. I might just be tired or run down, whatever. Like,
Mhm.
and yeah, I end up doing another rotation and deployment. And I'm like, man, something's not right. Something's just not clicking, and came back mid row, I believe, mid rotation. Deployments are short compared to the conventional army.
Mhm. Was it like 3, 6 months?
Yeah, without getting into
Yeah,
it
I mean, without.
specifically, yeah,
Yeah,
it's in that time frame. It's much shorter than a conventional unit would deploy.
for sure.
Um, so yeah, I came back, uh, went back to the medic. This time it was one of our civilian physician assistants, and he I was talking to him, and then a nurse case manager, like I was telling you before, Peggy.
Yeah,
Uh,
oh, Peggy.
yeah, you have a name, Peggy. Like you can get stuff done.
You
Like
can
you don't have to
rely.
go for an
You can
answer,
always
right?
rely on Peggy.
Yeah. So yeah, she kind of overheard, and she referred me. She they put in another referral. Immediately got denied because the same doctor saw it.
Mhm.
And I don't, she pulled some strings or made some phone calls and told people some stuff that they didn't want to hear.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up getting in. Um, and yeah, the guy was phenomenal who I saw the second time. He's like, hey, I'm going to put you in immediately for an MRI. And so the symptoms that I was having was, short-term memory issues, mood swings bad, being angry, not really knowing why I was angry. I just thought it was, I don't know,
Mhm.
and there's no real explanation to it. And it was kind of tough to not understand that. Um, As you can see, the memory stuff. I had something I was going to say, and chronic migraines. Later found out that I have dilated pupils from that. So yeah, ended up getting a MRI done, and he's like, "Hey, you know, can you come in? We got your findings, blah blah blah." I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I went in. He's like, "You got lesions on your frontal bilateral lobes." He's like, which is in conjunction with what you told me, which is overexposure to basically blunt force trauma. He said that's a repeated concussion. He broke it down Barney style for me because I'm like, what the
Yeah.
hell are you talking about? Like, I don't know what the hell this is, like I feel dumb, like, and he's like, what are your symptoms? And I went off and I told him that. He's like, well, this part of your brain controls X, Y, and Z. He said, this explains, everything. He's like, I gonna recommend you for a med board. What the hell is a med board? He said, oh, medically retired from the military. And I'm like, it was kind of it was surreal,
Mhm.
it's I guess the only way of putting it was yeah, that was just a surreal thing, like everybody, that the end is coming. Everybody leaves the military at one point,
Yeah.
and that that's going to happen, but you want to leave on your terms,
Mhm.
and I've watched real good buddies who, kind of left in the same manner, some in worse condition, missing extremities and stuff like that. And, you never want to be in that position. So yeah, it was kind of a tough pill. And then it kind of just put me on a road of recovery. What are the next steps? And, for 3rd Ranger Battalion, that was like a new thing, like TBI. And as the Army as a whole, they're like, we're not used to dealing with this, and
Mhm.
TBI, because he's like, most patients don't show symptoms until years down the road. He's like, it's from brain injuries. He's like, your injuries came like this,
So
and
was that because of the extent of them? Was it because they were just more serious than other TBIs, or was it just your specific case where they just happened to come up sooner?
he said the way that he explained it was everybody's body reacts differently. He said I could put somebody else next to the same exact things that you did. He
Mhm.
said, that may not affect them like you. He said we might not see it on them for X, Y, and Z reason. And he's like, basically, I got dealt a bad hand, essentially,
Yeah.
like jokingly, like weak minded, uh, so
I can imagine
yeah,
that wasn't easy though, because just hearing that you got dealt a bad hand, I mean, that sucks to hear.
yeah. I mean, like I said, everybody, the end. You're getting out of the military one way or another at some
Hmm.
point, and most people, I would say 98% of people want to get out on their terms, whether it's
Right.
they're just burned out of it, they're sick of it, like,
Yeah.
or, it's retirement. And so, yeah, I mean, I had aspirations and goals to continue to go forward and, you know, do bigger and better things, what I thought were bigger and better, and try to take the next step. And when I got told that, it was just kind of like, man, what am I going to do now? Like I'm broken, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, how is this going to impact my life? And at the time, I was married, not married anymore. Um, yeah, it was kind of difficult situation for me because it was kind of panic mode, which the medical board is through the Army is, I guess it's gotten better.
Hmm.
I guess it's much faster, but I think it took me a year And
Yeah, I think
along that
I
way,
think it still takes some time, but yeah,
really,
I'm sure it
but
was. If I remember correctly, back years ago, it's it takes a long time, year or more, to get out.
yeah. And the shitty part is, they don't really tell you anything. Like you're in limbo this entire
Hmm.
time. You're like, what's gonna happen next? Blah blah blah. Like, and so yeah, during that time, like I felt like a test patient. You know,
Hmm.
it's like uh, occupational therapy for memory, Botox, which I still get for migraines. It's 38 injections every 3 months across all through your
Oh,
head, down through your
38.
back. Yeah.
Oh, but we never talked about that. I knew you got injections. I didn't know it was 38.
Yeah, yeah. It's I think it's 37 or 38. I'm actually going up there tomorrow to get them done. Um, so yeah, that physical therapy for the vertigo. Um, and it was just so much
Yeah,
appointment after it was. I lived in the hospital. It was kind of demoralizing, in a
I was gonna
sense.
ask that.
It definitely takes its toll on you, because you're like, man, like when does this stop, or when am I going to get better? And that was another tough thing for me. The doctor's like, I don't. He said this is more than likely your new norm, and I'm like, yeah, no. What I
Yeah,
mean? Like you're kind of in denial. You're like, no way. Like I'm not going to live my life with chronic migraine. There's no way. I can't do this. Like,
yeah.
like my body will recover somehow and I'll be fine. And yeah, yeah, it's what has it been 17, almost 5 years now. Still same, going through the same issues, same treatment plans, trying to, you know, fight through it and just try to continue to get better. It was kind of foolish of me, but I tried to roll the dice because I'm like, you know what? Like somebody's gonna tell me I can't do something. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show them that I'm gonna do it, that I can do it.
Yeah.
And I think I went 6 months without Botox. And man, I ended up in the hospital, actually in the ER one night. I could not move. And I'm
Just
like,
from the pain.
yeah, it was just black spots, and it was more so my neck, actually. My muscles in my neck like freaked out.
Mm,
Like like a withdrawal or something from it, because Botox
yeah.
is designed to relax your muscles. And so everything just like locked up my head and my neck, and I couldn't move. And I'm like, man, this is bad. Like
Ooh.
I don't like going to the doctor, especially
Yeah.
in an emergency situation. And I think it was like 2 a.m. I didn't sleep. And I'm
Hmm.
like laying there in this fetal position. And I'm like, hey, my significant other now, I was like, hey, we gotta go. You gotta drive me. And I'm just like, she like helped me get in the car, and I'm like laying in the seat, and I'm like, I can't even wear my seatbelt. I'm like, man, this is terrible. And I get in the hospital and they're like, what's wrong? And I'm like this, and this area is known with drug addicts, so like
Hmm.
cops and everything are like in there. And like I'm not overdose, I'm not taking
Yeah.
drugs. Like, this is the situation. So they were kind of cool. They took care of me.
That's
But
good.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to get off track.
No, no, not
Well,
at
yeah,
all.
ended up getting out, moved back uh, to New York, which is where I'm from originally. Didn't want to do that at all. But my ex-wife, she was like, oh, we've been away from family for, so many years, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I think I owe it to you to kind of, be back in the surrounding area. Um, so her and we moved back. We had a house. We had a second kid. This is my youngest. His name's Bryce. He's 3. He's a handful. I think he'll be the wrestler.
Yeah.
But yeah, we
Hopefully
ended
there's
up,
one.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I ended up moving back, continued my treatment plan, got integrated in with the VA very quickly. Was assigned nurse case manager. Her name is also Peggy.
I bet she was great.
Yeah. So it's funny. So I had terminal leave. So I had a lapse kind of where I was in the military, but was out, and I couldn't get fully integrated into the VA and get treatment through the VA. So I had to go through TRICARE and try to get a referral to go see community care for my Botox. And it, the local places here are like, hey, we're like 6 months out. And I'm like, is that a thing? So yeah, anyways, I had that lapse there, and I went to Syracuse, which is where their hospital is in this region.
Mhm.
And yeah, I linked in with her, and I was like, hey, like, I'm over my Botox, like way overdue. And she's like, oh, okay, no worries. She's like, just get it scheduled or whatever she said. Anyways, the neurology department was like, yeah, no, we don't just do that. Like, you got to go through a sequence of events and other treatments before you get here, because Botox is super expensive, and
Right.
the side effects from it could be, I don't
But
know.
you've been doing Botox already.
Yeah, I was doing Botox for like a year and a half at this point.
Yeah.
And so I called her and I'm like, hey, Peggy, like, I'm getting some pushback on this. She's like, give me 2 minutes. I'm going to call him. I was like, okay. She literally called me back probably within a minute. She's like, they're going to call you in the next 5 minutes with an appointment. I was like, wow.
Oh,
She's
Peggy's
like,
a hero.
yeah, anybody named Peggy, you're just an absolute. Um, so yeah, I ended up getting in, and since then, getting out, the majority of my cares through the VA,
Mhm.
and I hear nothing but horror stories, or you usually do when you get out.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really not true. I'm not sure if it's different because I actually have a nurse case manager, but for my case, they will do backflips to ensure that everything is needed. Like, anything that you need is taken care of.
Mhm.
Um, they're the ones calling me typically, like, hey, you have an appointment,
Yeah.
tomorrow. I actually had a phone call before you and I sat down on here, like, hey, you got your Botox appointment tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So yeah, they're usually the ones who chase you down. It's not the other way around. And
Mhm.
if you do call, then you leave a message, and either that afternoon or tomorrow they'll call you right back. Um, so yeah, I can't say enough, at least for this region, enough good stuff about them. Um, like, when I ended up in the hospital, my BioWave, which is like a 10 unit on steroids, so
Mhm.
it's a prescription thing. It actually ended up breaking, or it was probably my fault because I didn't charge the battery, so the battery just flatlined. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, that was broke. So I ended up calling Peggy again, and I was like, hey, I at first I called the BioWave people, and they're like, hey, you need to send this in and we'll look at it and then we'll mail back to you once we fix it. I was like, yeah, I can't wait that long. Like,
Yeah.
I am crippled. And so, yeah, I called her. She's like, I'll have a new one on your doorstep tomorrow. And lo and behold, I had a new one on the doorstep and a return label for the old one, and threw it in there, and I had a brand new one.
Man.
So, yeah, they're phenomenal, man. So with my dilated pupils, my windows on my vehicles are blacked out because my eyes draw on too much light.
Mhm.
Um, and so I have like these contacts that are black on the backside to restrict my pupils. Um, anything, like I said, anything, you name it, like, they will go out of their way to ensure that, your treatment plan is well. And
Yeah. That they're doing what they can.
Yeah, absolutely. And also too, like counseling services and stuff like that. Like if you don't like somebody that the VA offers, that happened to me. If you don't like somebody that they offer, you can request for community care, go outside the network and see somebody who's not affiliated with the government. Um, so yeah, I ended up finding a counselor. It was crucial for me, I guess, through the divorce. I was like, tough time getting out, trying to adjust to this life on top of COVID, where everything got shut down.
Yeah.
Well, it was divorce, COVID. One of my good friends got killed overseas. And so it was like everything just like compiled onto one. And I'm like, man, like, whatever. So I ended up seeing this guy, O'Hagan, Dr. O'Hagan. And I went in there one day. He's like, hey, man, this is my last week here. He said, I'm going out. He said, I'm starting, my own. I was like, dude, like, I went through like 30 people before I found somebody who I actually liked. And you're leaving. And he's like, yeah, he said, I'm going to try to get in with the VA. So the VA would pay for it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right. So I reached out to Peggy again and I was like, hey, Peggy, like, yeah, she's like, yeah, you're going to get somebody else. And we're going to get somebody else, as the VA is. And I was like, yeah, but I like really like Dr. O'Hagan. And she was like, well, can you at least give her a shot? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll give everybody an opportunity. Like,
Yeah.
maybe I would like you more or her more. And so anyways, yeah, I went there and it was like very awkward situation. Like as soon as I sat down with this lady, she was just like, oh, like going through divorce, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, like try to get to know me. And, I just felt super uncomfortable. And,
Yeah. It didn't feel like wasn't very
yeah,
personal.
it didn't click. And
Yeah.
I think that at least for me, when you're seeking services like that, like you usually know right off the get-go, like within the first 15 minutes is, does this person genuinely care and can I form a connection with them? And yeah, so I ended up calling Peggy. I'm like, hey, like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be difficult. I said, but she's not working. And she was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and put you in a referral. And I got it like that. She was like, yeah, immediately got approved. She said, so go ahead and call him and schedule appointments. We'll get you all set up, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, man, I can't say enough good about the VA. Like just overall what they offer.
Well, you mentioned something last time we were talking, the boots to business, right?
Yeah. So I took, since I got out off, the divorce and kind of just everything life. And my main focus was to get back on track mentally and physically, before I try to pursue something meaningful. Because you always got to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. Right.
100%.
Put your mask on before you help somebody else.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's the VA offers a it's not talked about and it's pretty difficult to get into because they have very strict requirements. But one of my other buddies who got out, former 375 guy too, he said, hey, like I understand you got like these health issues, migraines, stuff like that. He said the VA offers a program that's called Boots to Business. It's designed for disabled veterans, with employment handicaps, where the only option for employment is self-employment. So they, it's like this huge long track. I'm kind of in the middle of it. I would say about 30% of the way into it.
Yeah.
It's like a ton of stuff. So you take like a career assessment, to kind of align what you want to do, to figure out what you want to do, like what job will suit you best. So yeah, I applied for it. They were very responsive too. Immediately said, yeah, I'd like to sit down. I think you meet the requirements. And so yeah, we been in it. She asked me, what type of business I'd like to start. I told her an excavation, something small like that. She's like, okay, and along with that, they assign you like a strategist, like a business strategist who help you develop a business plan. Because
Okay.
it goes through a process, right? You start at the lowest level with meeting with your counselor, and they typically tell you yay or nay right off the bat. Like, yes, you meet the requirements, or no, your injuries do not qualify you to meet the
Right.
requirements. And from what she told me, there's like a less than 100 of these businesses funded
Mm-hmm.
through the VA. So she was like, yeah, we got to go. She said, but, I need you to go do this physical therapy test, so to speak, at the VA. It was like a 4-hour long exam. She's like, because you got, the back issues, blah, blah, blah. She's like, I just need to make sure that you're physically capable of performing these tasks of this job.
I was gonna ask that. I was gonna ask if like they look at the job request and then kind of cross reference that with what you have going on of
Oh
the
yeah,
reason you're
they
at the
definitely,
VA.
yeah, they definitely do. So yeah, that's why that physical fitness evaluate. I don't remember the exact name of it, but yeah, it was a physical fitness
Mm-hmm.
something. Um, Ended up getting that, sent it in, and her and I went over it. She's like, "Yep, you meet the requirements." She said, "So let's move forward." She said, "What do you need? What are the next steps?" She said, "I recommend us getting you back into school, or at least do like an entrepreneurship certificate at a university or something."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, we're in the middle of figuring that out now. And along the way, they pay for it. So like, say it is an excavation business. Well, what do you need to tow that type of weight? Some
Right.
type of CDL. I don't know if it's A or B, but you need some type of driver's license to do that.
For sure.
So they'll enroll you in that. They'll pay for that. And all while you're doing this, you're working with this individual to write this business plan, which will ultimately go to DC in front of the board. And at that point, they're like, hey, we will fund the business, either a grant or a business loan, or we won't. And then if they do deny it, she told me that you can go back to the drawing board, essentially, and figure out something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty in depth, like a market analysis and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I mean, it's the government willing to sign a check, essentially,
Yeah, they're
to,
basically protecting their own
yeah,
investment,
which
kind of.
is great. And along with that, the person who helps you develop the business plan also follows you for your first year.
Okay.
Basically gives you pointers, helps you keep track of everything, blah, 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 just kind of showing you the ropes. So yeah, it was an awesome program that, I guess these little hidden gems, so to speak,
Yeah.
um, that nobody tells you about. Um,
Well,
and
like you said, there's just so many. I mean, the horror stories far outweigh, and they really do outshine. I don't know if shine's the right word, but they really do outshine the good stories.
yeah, I think that there's just a stigma associated with it. And I think
Mhm.
that that's, the military as a whole. There's a stigma with, I think Chris touched on it with your guys' podcast, a stigma with being hurt, in a sense,
Yep.
whether it's, mental illness or a physical injury, right? You don't want to come forward because, you lose your job,
Hmm.
not essentially, but you lose progress. So, um, Yeah, I kind of lost where I was going with that. There we go.
Well, no, it's all good. It's all good. So kind of what you were talking about with the stigma. I don't know if you remember when we were last talked, you brought up a movie, That Which I Love Destroys Me.
Yeah.
So
I
I
actually,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, I
Go
was
ahead.
gonna say I checked out the trailer. I'm definitely gonna watch the movie. I checked out the trailer after you told me about it, and the stuff they were kind of going into, talking about how it was hard to explain to people, or how to there was a wife on there too, basically saying like it's hard to be supportive when you don't understand what they're going through, and it's kind of hard for the person to explain it when they don't really understand it either.
Yeah, so that was that kind of brings me into my my only marriage. Um, with my ex-wife was, not really. I didn't know how to explain it. I was angry and I didn't know why, and I couldn't put put a finger on it, and
Hmm.
kind of tried to explain that to her, and people don't necessarily get it.
Yeah.
Um, and that they said something in the movie or in that documentary that um, you can spend your life trying to explain to people what they won't understand, or you can live with it and basically seek your own help.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's kind of lost where I was going with that again.
It's all right.
Bring me back on track here.
Yeah, so kind of like when you're, because I've been seeing a lot of that with like PTSD and TBIs as well. The things that you experience that you're going through, whether it be the mood swings or anything like that, it's not because of anything specific. So you can't really tie it down. It's just you are all of a sudden now you're mad, or now you're sad or something like that. You're going through an emotion that you can't explain. And for most people who have no experience with people in the military, or the military itself, or PTSD or TBIs, to that's completely alien to them, because it's like there's usually a reason why you're mad. There's usually a reason
Yeah.
why you're irritated at something, and so to not have any reason, that is hard for people to grasp, I think.
Yeah, it is. Kind of one thing that's really stuck with me. My ex-wife said it once. She's like, I think you're using it as an excuse. And at that point, I was like, I know that this marriage isn't like
Yeah, it's
isn't
that's
isn't where it needs to be. And it's definitely, I don't think it's gonna be where it's ever gonna need to be at
yeah.
this point.
I
Um,
think and I think this needs to be highlighted more, so that, I mean, you need that support. You know what I mean? You need to be able to have that person there that can, be there even if you don't understand it and they don't understand it. They just have to know that sometimes that it is what it is.
Yeah, to this day, my biggest supporters are guys who I worked with,
Hmm.
always reaching out, we've always taken care of each other. And, um, there's a saying that, I have friends that are family, and family I wouldn't even consider friends. Um, for the most part, I
Absolutely.
mean, my immediate family's been great and supportive, but, outside of that, they all live normal lives, and it's difficult to, be like, hey, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it just kind of felt like somebody punched me in the chest all over again, getting out, trying to find my way, and just
Hmm.
felt uncomfortable, I guess, it was something different, feeling sorry for myself, I guess, is, how
Yeah.
we could put it. Um, and then just kind of having all that with my ex-wife thrown on top of it. Granted, I had a lot of room for improvement as a
Hmm.
husband, and I was willing and pursuing to get better. Trying to help them understand the nature of the injury, and like, hey, like, I just can't bring the boys to school today. Well, why? I'm just angry. Like, why are you angry? I don't know. Well, you have to know why you're angry, type of thing. Like, but I don't, like, you've sat here and you listened to this, and I don't know if you weren't processing it when a doctor or somebody else was telling you, or articles that I sent you. And so yeah, it really brought a lot of tension into the relationship. A relationship that was already pretty tense to begin with for other reasons. But yeah, we ended up going our separate ways, and I met somebody else, and man, she's like, it's night and day difference. It's, I don't have to walk on eggshells, or I can be like, hey, like, I'm having an off day. Like, I'm going to do me today. Like, I'm going to play golf or something, and she'd be like, okay, have a great day.
That's a good feeling
What-
to
yeah,
not have to walk on eggshells. That's like that's shit. That's half the battle, I think.
yeah,
That's,
it is. It is. And I think a lot of people, I think that there's a stigma with that too, is, guys getting out is, uh, they're not okay, and they just kind of act like it is okay. And, if you can try to communicate that with somebody, it definitely helps. And like you said, the ability to not have to do that, to walk on eggshells and have somebody supportive, was very foreign to me. It's like,
took some getting used to it.
what's coming on the backside of this? You know what I mean? Like, is
when's
this
the other shoe gonna
sincere?
drop?
Yeah. Like, is this sincere? Like, are you being sincere? Like, or am I going to come back home and like all your stuff's going to be gone?
I just think it's funny when.
Yeah. But no, she's been phenomenal, and she's like a huge push for me. She's like, hey, like, did you follow up with a VA? Like, she's another one. Like, hey, you got an appointment, right? And I'm like, yeah. The next day comes, she'll call me.
Is her
She'll be
name
like,
Peggy?
no, God. So yeah, she'll, I'll still be home, and she'll be like, hey, you remember I remind you yesterday that you had an appointment? I'm like, legitimately, I completely draw a mind blank. I'm like, no, you didn't say that. She's like, I told you, but like jokingly. And she's like, you need to go. And I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, man, it's absolutely phenomenal to have somebody who's so supportive and understanding. That's a big thing, whether it be, a significant other, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, or, an immediate friend. Like I said, I still got all my friends, who are in, like, hey, random, like, hey, how you doing? Like,
Yeah.
when you coming down, blah, 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 when we gonna hang out, and when you link back up with them, it's like you never left,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
So I had a question, kind of going back to when this whole thing kind of started, when you were first finding out about the TBI. Was it hard to also explain that without, I don't want to get too much into how units operate or any of your command or anything like that, but was it hard to explain that to them or anyone within your unit? Was there kind of a barrier there because it wasn't wasn't an injury that you could necessarily see? Was there a little bit of a kind of a weird feeling there? Or because some people, they're like, I don't want to go to sick hall because I don't want to look like a shitbag in my unit.
Right. Yeah. I think that's just a natural stigma. People don't want to go because they don't want to look like, they're being weak. Right.
Yeah.
But overall, at first, when I initially went, it was kind of like, hey, like, you sure, like, be certain that, like, whatever. And but once the MRI came back, it was kind of like, oh shit, there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're exposing people way too frequently to this, and it kind of, I was kind of the guinea pig. You know, I kind of opened up the floodgates
Yeah.
for battalion as a whole, because they were like, man, like this is serious.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple other individuals from that rotation got med boarded as well for TBI related stuff. And so yeah, they started taking it super seriously. I don't know if they still do, obviously, but
Yeah. I hope so.
yeah, me too. I actually got a phone call. It was random. I think it was Georgia Tech or Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
like med students or something. And they're like, hey, we were, interviewing people at the organization, blah, blah, blah. They told us that you'd be a good contact. And they were asking me a bunch of questions like survey related stuff. Because I guess they're trying to tie everything in and figure out what the causes are and if there's a potential treatment plan that could be beneficial for the warfighter. And so, yeah, that was pretty interesting and kind of cool. I thought,
That is
they
cool.
were like, oh, they're taking this extremely seriously and they're trying to find the way. Because even the neurologist, when I was in, he's like I said, this is so new. He's like, TBIs they're not new, but they're,
Mm-hmm.
they're new because they surface years later. He said, people who had them, in 2008 are not starting to show until,
Yeah.
2018 or later. So it's definitely new to us. And, but yeah, no, they didn't really provide me, or really give any type of pushback, like
That's good.
they were just kind of like, hey, like check in with us, make sure that you're still alive, like
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Get to your physical therapy appointments. Like you don't have to tell us, like, hey,
Yeah.
stop in once, twice a week and be like, hey, I'm still alive,
For sure.
But man, they were, yeah, it wasn't bad. I mean, they just kind of let me do my own thing. And, I tried to help others, who are going through the same process. They're like, hey, I'm experiencing this. And, because the biggest thing was the providers providing pushback. It wasn't battalion.
Mm-hmm.
It was, providers within the hospital who were like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I think that they were scared kind of, to put any type of diagnosis to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, they just seemed extremely timid. At least the one neurologist did. Um, so yeah, I mean, I had nothing bad really to say other than how long the med board takes, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Uh, but other than that, man, yeah, it was pretty good. And my experience has been pretty positive throughout. I mean, I've hit road bumps along the way and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of figured them out myself. And, um, yeah, it was, like I said, I think I told you before, I definitely hit a rough patch, there between the divorce, COVID, my buddy Rod got killed overseas. Um, yeah, it was definitely a rough patch for me.
I was gonna ask about that, man. As we're kind of like, as we're kind of drawing this to a close a little bit, man. You went through so much in kind of a short period of time. I mean, we all went through COVID. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah,
is hard enough for anybody, honestly.
yeah.
That just for whatever you believe about it, or it caused a strain for everyone.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You lost. I mean, you lost a friend dealing with the TBI and having to get out of something that you loved and wanted to progress in. How did you? Not saying that you've completely. I'm not going to assume that you've completely come out of this. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
But what have you done to kind of to help yourself through it? Like what's kind of been some contributing factors to that?
Man, well, I kind of went through a period where, I was feeling sorry for myself
Hmm.
and just kind of didn't want to do anything, be honest with you. I was like, man, like just kind of reflecting, like just the sequence of events. Um, and then, I was kind of like, you know what? Like, who the hell am I? Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? I went through this. I had all these goals in life, you get thrown a freaking curveball, like, get back up and keep going. Um, so yeah, I just kind of, I was big into hunting. I was big into competitive shooting and, I stopped doing it all. I really just isolated myself. Um, and it seems like that's very common situation because they touch on it in that movie.
Hmm.
Now I'm thinking about it, they're like, what was so common? Everybody started to isolate themselves. And, you see the problem, you recognize the problem, and you try to um, resolve the problem.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I started, just kind of doing stuff for myself again. Found new hobbies. I found something that I was trying to master, right? So when I was in, what was I trying to do? What was the end state? What was I trying to master? Well, I wanted to go to Bragg and be in a different special missions unit. And so, what did I do? I shot every day, my cardio, I went to the gym, so I picked up golf, which is kind of funny. I golf a lot. And I got really good really fast, all self-taught. And actually, this year was my first year hunting again. And so I just kind of forced myself to get going, right?
Hmm.
I took a year and a half off from the gym and I got back in the gym. So the biggest thing for me was doing stuff that I loved again, the past isn't going to change, right?
Hmm.
So am I going to sit here and feel sorry for myself and just kind of go around the rest of the world? Oh, poor me, poor that. No, like, the biggest thing for me was getting up and just taking that first step again, right?
Yeah.
When you get knocked down, like pick yourself up and take that step, I don't shoot as much as I used to, and I'm okay with that um, overall. But I just replaced it with something else that I wanted to master, um, which is golf, being involved in my kids' sports, just trying to be there as a whole while trying to maintain my health and just progress as not only an individual but as a father as well. I mean, I got two little ones who, are always talking about it, like my plaques and stuff, like, Dad, oh, what's this?
Yeah.
Shell casings. Dad, is this, what the bad guys were using? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, buddy, we'll talk about it at, a different
Yeah.
day. Um,
Exactly.
so that was another thing for me too, was just being there and just being a good role model for my kids. Like, yeah, it sucks that all this happened, but you know what? It's everybody's going to get knocked down, and really what defines you is, if you keep getting back up and keep going. I know that sounds cliche, but it's very true.
Yeah. I mean,
You
there's real truth to it.
Um, but yeah, that was the biggest thing for me, was just, forcing myself to do it. And I think Chris touched on that with your guys' podcast, take that step, like find that hobby,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, you sit stagnant, you're going to rot, right?
Yep.
I always said that, comfort builds complacency and complacency kills you. Um, and that was true in the job, previous
Hmm.
job. That's true in life, Um, so
Write that
yeah,
down.
man,
It's
that's
actually
kind of
good.
where I got myself up and got going. That's how I um, really just keep going day in and day out. And obviously, some days, I mean, there's days where you're like, man, this sucks, like today I was like super tired, right? And went to the hockey game last night and didn't get home till early afternoon today. And I'm like, man, I feel tired.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that sucks. I'm still going to the gym, like
Yeah, exactly.
you need to
It
still go. Like,
push
you
through
still
it.
need to get up. You still need to, get dressed, go do something for yourself each and every day. Build yourself each and every day. That's the biggest thing. And
Well, I've totally found that the days that I'm just feeling like shit or just don't want to do something like work out, if I just take that step, that literal step, like out the door and just go to the gym, I feel so much better than even if at like a day that I was motivated. I feel so much
yeah,
better when I
dude.
get back.
Yeah, you're like, holy fuck, like I'm glad that I did this. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that was big, and I fell down that rabbit hole, and I think a lot of people did over COVID.
hmm
You know, so yeah, just get up and keep pushing forward.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Corbin, for coming on the podcast, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah. And you have a good day and stay strong, man.
Thanks, you too.
Hey guys, this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Without a healthy mind and being truly at peace, it's hard. And the good news is that therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools or some help, or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work or not dealing with the stress of everyday life. Like, I get it. But whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of the normal human struggles and start feeling better, because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. And it's much more affordable than in-person therapy. And you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Guys, that's huge. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself. And because you are your greatest asset. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. And TWNY listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/TWNY. That's betterhelp.com/TWNY. Let's get back to it, guys.